So part 2. The layers of organza. So I used the white organza. You can find it here very easily. The black organza, you can find it. What you cannot find is I couldn't find different shades of gray and different shades of dusty like a pink with a shade of gray, like a dusty pink, because we needed that transition. And unfortunately I wanted the transition to be much smoother than this, but I couldn't, because there was a lot to do for this skirt. So what I did, it was the white one was there, which is 5 layers of white organza. There are 4 layers of pink, but I had actually, this is 3 layers of pink here, okay? But to get from this pink to this white, I needed a transition. I need something that would smooth this transition. So what I did, I got the white and I got the pink and I put the white on top of the pink. So this layer is actually 2 layers of folded organza. So each of these, they are folded, one folded, but this is 2 folds, which would create a color in between the white and the pink. And like you would think that it would be very thick and you would know, but actually it looks nicer, because it makes a difference. Like it's not it's not bland, and the way it stands, this is more stiffer, which makes it like pop out. And I think it was actually a good thing that I couldn't find all shades of organza. And I did this here again. Between this shade of gray and this pink, I needed something in between, so I put the pink under the gray, and then this is again double folded organza. And then we go to the gray here, the darker gray. Again, these 3 shades of the dark gray, I had it. But to go from here to the light gray, this one, I mixed this two. I put the light gray inside the darker gray and I folded it. And so I would have a smoother transition. But now that I look at it, and when I took the pictures last night, I realized that it would have been better if I used 2 layers of this, or to make it a bit smoother here, the transition. And the black ones is just like 4 layers of black organza. So now the rest of the skirt, well, the thread that I used, because honestly it was I realized it was much more difficult if I wanted to use the different colors for all of them. I would have gone mad. And I have actually a friend here who studied fashion design, and she has actually her own showroom here. So she provided a lot of help for me. She took me to the places that they sell supplies, and she gave me also ideas. Like whenever I had a problem, I would ask her and she would really help me out with it. Like for example, I didn't know it in New York, but there is this very thin elastic kind of thread, which is like, it has no color. And I used that thread to stitch all these layers, because then I didn't have to change the color. It's like a colorless thread. So I used this thread to stitch all the layers. So I started from here, which is like I used the first layer of this is like I used it. I started using how do you say it, here the lower layer, it has the biggest length, which is 5 inches, and then I go to 4 inches, and then smaller and smaller and smaller, like 2 inches, and then I just reduced it to here, which is like almost half an inch, to make it a nicer flow over here. As for how it goes up and down, so what I did is just, okay, this one here is the side seam. Okay, so you can see here, because honestly at first I did this on the pattern. But then it was taking so much time to transfer all of those lines into the base, the satin here that I used to base this on it. So after I realized how it goes, I just, with a pencil, I just drew the lines on the fabric, the stitch lines, because transferring 21 lines of stitch lines from first to the paper and then to the fabric, it would have taken 2 months. You know, because I had to do all of those, the threads going up and down. So, but basically, if you see at the beginning here, this one is just like a flounce. This is like a bias, and then I go down here. Here I couldn't go up and down. Even though in Christian Dior I noticed that they also, the up and down movement, it starts from like a 3rd or 4th layer, but I couldn't manage to do that. So the beginning of the layers are pretty like circular and they don't have any ups and downs. But then as we come down, I started to make like a small a small mountain, like I would just make a small movement as in going up. But you know, when I first started, I first started like 7 inches down. I started making the first line first here, and then I followed this line up and I followed this line down. And I mean, by following, I mean drawing the parallel line to it. So here you would see that, you know, it goes up here and we go down here, and then we go up here and then we go down here, and then on the sides we go up here and down, and then 2 ups at the back. So when you stitch it this way, that would just create this shape. You know, when the organza goes up, it would just, you know, naturally it would create this shape by stitching it this way. And because it's biased, the fabric, it was easy to turn. But because, especially for this one, because it was 2 layers of folded bias, and because these had to, they all of them to hold all of them, and it, you know, all of them to stretch out in the circular motions, it got a bit difficult, and it got a bit puckery here, you know. I think one way to make it stop from puckering, which I actually did it for a lot of parts, I did that, is to, you know, do you remember like the techniques that you showed us to hold the 2 fabrics together through like a cross stitch? We do a cross stitch to hold them together. So the best way to stitch them, all these layers, onto the base, which is a satin, it's a beige satin here, it's to, you know, all these bias layers, we have to have every 1.5 inch or 2 inches, we have to make a cross stitch with hand. Okay, so and so it, so that they would fold, the folds, they would hold each other exactly on the edge when you put it under the sewing machine. And for Christian Dior, the reason that it's much cleaner, of course, when you look at here, it's because they do base it with, before they put it even under the machine, they base it with hand. So that's why I had those pictures that a lady was working on the dress form, and she was sewing these layers with hand. She was actually just basing it before putting the each layer under the sewing machine. I'm going to go to part 3 video because this is a 9 minutes video now. So let's go to part 3.